Mr. Griffith.
Present.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Howe.
Here.
Ms. McDermott.
Here.
Mr. Perry.
Here.
Ms. Radel.
Here.
Ms. Sedman.
Here.
Mr. Schnee.
Present.
Mr. Urban.
Here.
Mr. Vogt.
Here.
Mr. McGinley.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Our first action today is the public hearing. Public hearing in regards to amendment to the 2021 year fiscal budget for Luzerne County, and this is the rental assistance program. And this was introduced the last time we met. And tonight we have the public hearing, and it's also on the agenda for the final vote in regards to amending the budget for 2021. I'd like to apologize to people who waited a couple minutes. We were in an executive session that required us to spend more time, and I would thank you for your patience. So the public hearing is now open to public who would like to address council in regards to the proposed budget amendment. Once again, anyone who would like to speak from the public in regards to the proposed budget amendment. Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Mr. Perry, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snee, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Thank you. Now going to go to the voting session. And we're going to again have the pledge of the flag and a moment's silence, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Griffith.
Present.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Howe.
Here.
Ms. McDermott.
Here.
Mr. Perry.
Here.
Ms. Radel.
Here.
Ms. Sedman. Ms. Sedman.
Here.
Mr. Schnee.
Present.
Mr. Urban.
Here.
Mr. Vogt.
Here.
Mr. McGinley.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Mr. DeLuca, do you want to comment on the executive session, please?
Yes, council met in executive session from 5 p.m. until approximately 6:05 p.m. this evening and received a report from Children and Youth, discussed personnel matters, and received an update on the litigation of Gans Multimedia versus Luzerne County. And that is filed in Luzerne County to 05412 of 2020.
Thank you. We're going to start the meeting today. We have a proclamation for the Triangle Club. Take a moment and read that, please. Whereas the Miners Mills Triangle Club is celebrating a momentous occasion of its 75th anniversary. Whereas on January 1945, 32 citizens of Miners Mill applied for a charter to start a social club. They call it the Miners Mills Triangle Club. The purpose of the club was to provide recreation for its members and for helpful and moral uplift of the citizenry, and also to provide home or club rooms for its members. In February of 1945, they were granted a charter at 24 East Main Street. By 1948, they had moved to 52 East Main Street and were issued a liquor license. By 1958, they had moved to their present address at 77 East Main Street. Whereas for the past 75 years, their motto has always been, always for the kids. Every year they've had a free Easter, Halloween, and Christmas parties for the area children. They have supported area children's sports teams financially and with donated labor. They provided meeting rooms for both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, and they have hosted numerous fundraisers for sick or injured children in the area. Now therefore, we, the Luzerne County Council, do hereby proclaim its gratitude and honor for all the members of the Miners Mills Triangle Club, who embody civic duty, community pride for all the residents of Luzerne County on their 75th anniversary. And we'd like to thank them for their work. And we will be sending that proclamation out to them this week. Thank you. Down to retirements, we have several people listed on our agenda this evening. William Famonte for Corrections Officer at the prison. Kathy Stamets, caseworker supervisor, children and youth. Lamont Stiles, a lieutenant at the Mental Offenders Unit. Ted Wampel, director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Mary Lou Zerfoss, a volunteer resource coordinator 1 for the Area Agency on Aging. Eugenia Galley, program specialist 2 for mental health developmental services. Joanne Johnson, who is a clerk typist with licensing, and Gail Shredney, who is a case manager 2 with mental health developmental services. We wish them well in their retirement and good health. Do we have any additions or deletions to the voting session agenda? Motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Howe, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. McDermott, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. We're now open for public comment on voting session agenda items. Any members of the public who would like to address council this time on agenda items? Again, any members of the public who would like to address the council this time on any of the agenda items? Okay, let's move down to the next item. Motion to approve the minutes of the October 12th meeting.
So moved.
Ms. Howe, do you have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Snee. On the question? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions?
No, Mr. Griffith.
Okay, Mr. Griffith and Mr. Urban. Motion carries. Nothing on our old business. Agenda items, county manager. Motion to adopt the ordinance amending the 2021 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County for the rental assistance program, which is the item we just talked about in the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Urban was a little bit ahead of that. On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hawes,
Abstain, Mr. Chair, for reasons before mentioned.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes,
10 yes, 1 abstention.
thank you. Motion to adopt the resolution requesting a multimodal transportation fund grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Perry. On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes,
10 yes, 1 abstention.
thank you. Number 3, motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the county manager to execute a license to utilize the premises agreement with UGI Utilities. Do we have a motion?
Presented Sheila.
Well, let's have Ms. Saban and Ms. Hopkins be second, okay?
That's fine.
Fine.
On the question,
On the question, Mr. Chair?
go ahead, Mr. Haas.
Yeah, last week I asked Mr. O'Neill if he could speak to it about the aesthetics of this, it's this conduit. I see here in the narrative there that there's 6-inch piece of conduit. It seems like it's not that, it's not going to cause that much of a problem there, but I want to know if he had spoken with Susquehanna Borough or Conyngham Township about that since last meeting.
Mr.
Good evening,
O'Neill,
members
are
of
you on?
council. Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
I am, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of council. I did have Mr. Plesh reach out to the surrounding communities. We have not gotten any feedback from them regarding any issues or concerns that they have with the conduit.
Mr. Haas, you probably muted.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's too bad. I don't think it's a big deal, Mr. O'Neill, but in your professional opinion, are you going to be able to see this 6 inches of conduit from the highway there next to the river?
No, this is going to be strung underneath the girds of the bridge. So
Under the
no,
pass
this
even.
will not be a something that's going to stick out when you're driving by at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Question, Mr. McGinley.
Go ahead.
Maybe Mr. O'Neill, I don't know if you did the contract or not, but in paragraph 5, I was just confused in terms of the termination sections, which said it was 90 days for them to let us know that they're going to terminate and 2 years for us. And I just wondered why that difference.
Well, I cannot speak to that issue. I know there was a termination clause that was recommended by our solicitor's office who reviewed the contract. And I believe that was something that they had requested. So I don't know the details as to why there's a discrepancy between those two timeframes.
Okay.
I would have to inquire with the member of the solicitor's office to review that.
Okay.
Does our council know, or the solicitor?
Mr. DeLuca, do you have?
Yeah, I don't know. I believe Mark Makowski would have reviewed that. I absolutely cannot see any circumstance typically where we would agree to have different termination clauses that way. So I'll have to check with him.
Thank you.
I think you're right. I think that the email came from Attorney Mikowski with the agreement.
Okay.
And one more thing, Vito, when you talk to him, I mean, I thought it was when they're asking about removing the equipment attached to the bridge, they have 18 months to remove it. Seems significant time period.
Okay. All right, roll call.
Ms. Hope,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
I would like the answers to the questions, so I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Shnee?
Yes.
Mr. Rubin?
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
And I agree with Ms. Saban. I'm going to vote no as well until we get an answer to that question.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no. Excuse me, 8 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstention.
Okay. Motion carries. Moving down to number 4, nominations and appointment of boards and commissions. Luzerne County Bureau of Elections and Registration. We know we have one opening because we declared a vacancy the last time we met. And the opening is for a person who represents the Republican Party. And you can see the term that person would be moving into. So at this point, nominations are now open for, we
We
are,
need a motion to open nominations.
yes, we do.
Motion to open nominations.
Ms. Hauk, do we have a second for Ms. Hauk?
Second.
Who the heck?
Yep, would everybody please mute themselves if they're not speaking, and only council people probably should be speaking at this time. Ms. Hauk, you made the motion. Who was second? I'm sorry, Ms. McDermott? Mr. Urban? Thank you. All in favor of open nominations, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions? None heard. Nominations are now open.
I'd like to nominate Patrick Castellani.
Mr. Castellani, and that's Ms. McDermott. Do we have a second for Ms. McDermott?
Second.
Tundra.
Mr. Sneed?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Candace Chillick.
Chilton? Thank you. That's Ms. Hauk. Do we have a second for Ms. Hauk? Do we have a second for Ms. Hauk?
Second, Sheila.
Ms. Sedman? Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Alyssa Fusaro, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Haas? Do we have a second for Mr. Haas?
Second.
Mr. Urban? I think we have all three people nominated, so do we have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Ms. Hauk, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. McDermott? All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
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 Any in opposition, any abstentions? You have in front of you the three names that were provided, Mr. Castellani, Ms. Chillick, and Ms. Fusaro. We'll have a roll call. We'll indicate the person that you are supporting among those three people that have been nominated, please.
Can we
Roll
speak to
call,
the
please.
nomination, Mr. Chair?
Excuse me?
Can we speak to the
Mr. Ross?
nomination?
We have never done that. What do you want to do, Mr. Haas?
Well, I just want to point out that Ms. Fusaro, when we had the inquiry, the elections inquiry, Ms. Fusaro actually participated, and I don't recall the other two candidates doing that. And I think she's distinguished herself that it would be appropriate for her to fulfill the role.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Roll call, please.
Ms. McDermott. Patrick Castellani.
Mr. Castellani,
Mr. Perry.
Castellani.
Ms. Radel.
Mr. Castellani.
Ms. Sedman.
Mr. Castellani.
Mr. Sneed.
Castellani.
Mr. Urban.
Fusaro.
Mr. Vogt.
Castellani.
Mr. Griffith.
Well, I'm gonna have to abstain because Mr. Castellani gave me money towards my campaign, so I'm not gonna be able to vote.
you're not going to vote for any of the other two, Mr.
No, I don't want to vote
Okay.
for any of them at this moment.
Okay, you can abstain, that's fine. Go ahead.
Mr. Haas.
Ms. Fusaro,
Ms. Hauk.
Ms. Chillick.
Mr. McGinley.
Mr. Castellani,
7 for Mr. Castellani, 1 for Ms. Chillick, and 2 for Ms. Fusaro.
okay. Mr. Castellani will be the new person on the election board. Moving down to number 5,
Resolution.
Motion to adopt a resolution appointing him.
Mr. Hauk makes that motion. We have a second for Ms. Hauk.
Second.
Ms. McDermott. Roll call.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Ms. Radel.
Yes.
Ms. Sedman.
Yes.
Mr. Sneed.
Yes.
Mr. Urban.
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt.
Yes.
Mr. Griffith.
Abstain.
Mr. Haas.
yes.
Ms. Hauk.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott. Yes. Mr. McGinley.
Yes,
9 yes, 2 abstentions.
thank you. Motion to adopt a resolution approving a budget transfer to allot funds for the special legal services. Do we have a motion?
So
So
moved.
Motion.
Walter moves it.
Mr. Griffith, you made the motion. Do we have a second for Mr. Griffith?
Second.
Mr. Perry? On the question,
Well, on the question,
Good.
I'm not supporting this because I think the whole thing is a waste of money. So I've said that from day one.
okay?
Just
Well,
another,
Paul,
another question, Mr. McGinley, is $10,000 really, is that going to be the max, or does Kendra think they'll be coming back?
I spoke to Ms. Radel, and certainly, Ms. Radel, if you want to comment on that, but $10,000 she thought would be reasonable, but Ms. Radel, you want to comment?
So all of council received the budget. So it's not really going through my committee anymore. It's just going through county council. So at this time, to cover the bill that we have and what we've accrued so far, the $10,000 transfer is necessary to cover our current costs. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. McGinley on the
Okay.
question.
Go ahead.
And I just want to let council know that the reason I support this is that it clearly is a violation of our charter. I think it's very important that this council recognize the fact that we need to defend the charter. They changed the rule to make it a 2-year term, which is in direct violation of our charter. That's why I'm supporting it. I don't think it's a waste. I really don't think it's a waste of money. I think it wouldn't have even started had the Office of Law not gave conflicting opinions in the first place. So I think it's very important that we continue to follow through with this so we don't allow people to arbitrarily, especially a body of the Board of Elections, which has absolutely no legislative power. The Board of Elections has no legislative power, yet they changed the term of the district attorney by vote. That cannot be permitted. And that's why I'm supporting this. I think it's very important that we send a clear statement that as council, the legislative branch, we will not allow that to happen. So I will be supporting it.
Okay, roll call.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Edmond,
Yes,
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Absolutely.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Absolutely not.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Well, I will be voting yes because we asked the legal firm to do the work, but I'm not in support of moving any further. I will vote yes, but I think we're at the point where this is the end of our involvement. Thank you. Number 6, motion to introduce the ordinance amending the capital plan budget for Luzerne County. Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Schnee, do we have a second for Mr. Schnee?
Second.
Mr. Perry. On the question.
Mr. McGinley, could you help us understand what we're amending the capital plan from? Is that money that we currently have that we're going to switch over there? Is that what that's about?
The money, Mr. Griffith, would be the money that would be coming from the Chamber of Commerce as a result of our action at the last meeting. So it's unbudgeted money, so we're not taking money from any department or any division. It would be money that would be coming from the chamber and it would go into our capital plan. Because I hope everybody realizes our capital plan is almost depleted at this point. We have approximately $100,000 left in the capital plan, which I think you all realize is a very, very small amount if we have any type of crisis over the next several months. So this will at least give us somewhat over about $250,000 in the capital plan, which probably is still too little, but at least we'll have a little more flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Roll call.
Ms. Edmond,
yes,
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
No.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott. Yes. Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
10 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. Moving on to number 7, we have a motion regarding the CCAP Fall Conference. This was something that was brought up at the last meeting, so we have it on the agenda for tonight. So we have a formal action on the part of council. The first part of the motion is allow Ms. Saban as a member of council to attend the CCAP Fall Conference and pay for the tuition involved. And then the second part would be to transfer money in order to make that payment. Do
I'll
we
make
have a
that motion,
on
Mr. Chair.
7A? Excuse me?
I'll make that motion.
You're making that motion, Mr. Haas? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second for Mr. Haas?
Second.
Ms. McDermott? On the
On
question?
the, yes, Mr. McGinley, Sheila, on the question, I was wondering, I mean, if I don't come out in a good position on Tuesday, I don't think I'll be attending. So should we postpone this? Would that be correct?
No,
Okay.
we don't have to pay the money until November the 10th. So we would have time to reflect on that if we need to.
Well, do we want to amend it to send one member instead of by name?
I don't, you know,
Sheila, would you feel better about that if we just amended it to
Sure.
fund for one member?
Sure.
Okay, I'd make that amendment then.
okay. We have an amendment to take Ms. Saban's name out and put,
Well, could I
one-
just ask before we go with that amendment, is there, I mean, we sent, what, three representatives,
in the summer.
to the conference in the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anyone else who wants to go or?
Well, if there is, we certainly have another meeting
We
before
could
that.
add to it.
so
Okay,
We can adjust
All right.
that.
then go ahead with that amendment.
All right, we have an amendment to make it a member instead of the name by Ms. Howe, second by Mr. Snee. All in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard,
Yep.
motion carries.
Do you have to have a
Mr. Haas, are
roll
you
call?
okay with-
Do you have to have a
Excuse me.
roll call? Do you have to have a roll call vote on that?
Not on the amendment, I don't believe, but we
Not
will
on
have
the
a motion, we will have a roll call on the motion, Mr. Haas, are you okay with that amendment?
I'm fine with the amendment.
Ms. McDermott, are you okay with the amendment?
Yes.
And I will say,
Now we'll
Mr.
have a
Chair,
roll call.
also
Yes.
before we take the vote, also, I'm almost positive that even if we don't send some, I think you get a partial reimbursement for that. So it wouldn't be a total loss from what I remember. But
I looked at that the other day, November the 10th, so we have a little bit of flex time there.
yeah. Okay, very good. You can call the question, Mr. Chair.
Roll call on the motion, please.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
I have a question, Mr. McGinley. Why are we doing a roll call vote on a motion that we didn't amend properly?
Well, I disagree with you. We amended it, and I don't believe we have to have a roll call vote on the amendment.
Well, then why are we doing a roll call vote on a motion?
Because we always do roll call votes, and I as the chair can ask for that.
No, resolutions.
Okay, then I want to
require-
ask the solicitor for an opinion then,
Resolutions require roll call.
It's not a resolution.
right?
Mr. Griffith, you're going to vote?
Resolutions require roll call?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and motions do not.
Right, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you. Yes, I will vote yes.
Okay. Move
Mr.
on.
Haas,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes,
Ms. McDermott. Yes. Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes,
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes,
10 yes, 1 abstention.
okay. Moving on to part B.
Now we need the resolution. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're okay, right?
Yep.
Motion to adopt a resolution approving a budget transfer to cover the expenses associated with attendance at the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania Fall Conference. We have a motion.
Presented.
Mr. Snee, do we have a second for Mr. Snee?
Second.
Mr. Perry? On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Urban,
Abstain.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
yes,
Ms. McDermott. Yes. Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
yes,
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
10 yes, one abstention.
Thank you. Motion to adopt a resolution approving the settlement of pending litigation in the matter of GAN's multimedia partnership versus Luzerne County. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Perry, do we have a second for Mr. Perry?
Second.
Second,
Ms. Howard? On the question,
On the question, are we going to say the amount?
it's in the resolution, $15,000. It's right there written in the resolution, Mr. Griffith.
Oh, okay, I didn't see the resolution. I apologize.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
There's no reason not to have it there, so it's in the resolution. Anyone else? Roll call?
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Abstain.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes,
10 yes, one abstention.
thank you. Public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the public who would like to address council this time on any non-agenda items. Once again, members of the public who would like to address council on any non-agenda items. We have a motion for adjournment.
Present.
Mr. Snee, Ms. McDermott,
Yes, second.
all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, any abstentions? None heard, motion carries. We're going to go to the work session at 6:50. Give us a 10-minute break. Anybody who needs to visit the lavatory or whatever.
Recording stopped.
I work with.
Oh, they were really good, I thought.
Remember? Yep.
They made a presentation to the school board because I read it in the paper. I think it was last week.
Actually, yeah, that was the same one. That's what he's talking about.
Yep. That's a big one for township. So, oh,
Somebody told me I lived down there.
okay.
So they go to township.
They had the public hearing last night.
Go to township.
Township. And the school district, that was just. Who's actually reported?
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna get any more work on the county code review, are we?
If you have time to do it, we can do something. We can look at, I know there were a couple of and there were not a lot, but if you think you have some time, maybe we could do something in November.
Yeah, let's look, if we can have one more meeting at least in
Okay.
November.
Okay,
See what the availability is for Mr. Griffith.
okay,
See if we can get something. Because once we get through November, it's all downhill.
yeah, I know. I'm retired now, so I can.
Well, as you well know, being retired doesn't mean you don't have a schedule.
That's true.
Sometimes it seems like you have more things than you ever had.
That's for sure.
Well, it's now 6:50. We're gonna call the meeting to order.
Recording in progress.
We're not gonna have the pledge or the moment of silence. We've already done that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffith,
Present.
Mr. Hawes,
Here.
Ms. Howe,
Here,
Ms. McDermott. Here. Mr. Perry,
Here.
Ms. Radel.
Here.
Ms. Edmond,
Here.
Mr. Schnee,
Present.
Mr. Urban.
Here.
Mr. Vogt,
Here.
Mr. McGinley,
Present.
all present.
Additions or deletions? Motion to adopt the agenda.
so moved.
Ms. Howe, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. McDermott. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions? None heard, motion carried. Mr. Sweats, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you is the budget reports for the Budget Finance Department for September. As in the prior quarter, there's a quarterly report that lists all funds. So there's the normal report that you get of just the general fund, a subsequent report of all funds, and then the other normal AP report as well as the cash balance. The AP report had about 30 invoices, but it was only about 7 vendors. So while it is larger than it has been in the past, it was just the timing when the invoices came in. So it's not a lot of vendors, even though it is more invoices than we've seen in the past. I did mention that I was going to run a variance report of over budget, and looking on this, I did not. So I will get that out. I did say I was going to do that, and it was not an intentional deletion on my part. We just didn't get to it, and I'm looking at it. It's obviously not in there. So I will get that to council so they have it. I do feel on the quarter, it's a valuable numbers to have. So you have your normal healthcare reimbursement, the taxes. A lot of the numbers are at either 66%, 75%, or 50%. The ones that are at 50%, we may have gotten a September charge that didn't hit until October. So it's not like we're that far behind. So some of them agency reimbursements for transfer out, for example, was at 50%. We had just gotten that invoice, and if myself or my team isn't in the computer in our office, were in the conference room, either prepping for the budget meetings or on day-to-day. And that entry probably got approved after the budget was actually, or after the budget report was printed. So as always, I will give that report for quarterly. I'll get that out. But as always, any questions that I can answer, I will. But I'll certainly get back to an email with a group of questions from any member of council. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Swets? Go ahead, Ms.
Yeah,
Hunt.
my only question is, you gave us a targeted amount that you thought we'd be at by the end of the year. Are we still holding true to that?
So far we are. We'll have a better picture in probably, now that we're at the end of October, in probably the next report, or not the next budget report, but that's, say, the meeting after the election, the November meeting. But so far, yes, we definitely want to firm that up with our estimates and our bills. We also have to get the ARC payment for the second half of the year out, complete our TRAN work. I know PFM, I believe Scott's going to be on a little bit later tonight. So there are some things we have to do to firm up that number. As of right now, I think we're okay, but I should have a firm number for the meeting on the 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If you have any questions, when you go through all the information, please record those to Mr. Swets, and he'll reply to those, please. Moving down to number 2, discussion regarding a resolution authorizing the county manager to execute a renewal contract with Thomson Reuters for the Westlaw legal research software. And I think Attorney Greenwald submitted this. Ms. Corcoran?
Yes, this is for the Public Defender's Office, and this is the legal research system that the Public Defender Office uses for their attorneys.
Okay. And what's the advantage in getting a 3-year contract, Attorney Greenwald?
Well, generally, this is the terms that we have had for the last 9 years that I've been the public defender. Each contract is a 3-year contract.
And does that provide any kind of discount or reduced?
Well, originally the contract was proposed to us at a 5% increase. And it was negotiated down by me to a 3% increase.
Okay. Questions for Attorney Greenwald?
Can I ask just in general, like with regarding the Westlaw legal contract itself, why isn't it done as a countywide contract, or is it done individually by department at this point? Would you get a better rate if the IT department negotiated the licensing for this particular product?
No, that and this has been brought up since I became the chief county solicitor. They have to be individual contracts. We can't have a unified county-wide contract. There are confidentiality issues. The public defender can't share the same program as the district attorney's office, or we can't share the same program as the courts. I looked into it early on in my tenure as the chief, and that was just not, it wasn't possible.
If I can add too, in response to that, there are needs, for example, other departments have that the public defender doesn't have, and vice versa. In other words, there's no need for the public defender's office to pay for what Westlaw calls a library of zoning law or
municipal law,
right, or taxation. So we pay for only what we use, and other departments throughout the county pay for what they use. We don't share libraries. It's really just not cost effective.
Thank you. Okay, this will be our next voting session.
Question.
Thank you. Moving down to number 3, LCTA letter. Ms. Corcoran?
This is a letter that I received from Robert Fume of LCTA. And basically the letter is asking that the county commit to the matching funds for the Murray project. We had someone from PennDOT speak to the issue. Right now, what they want is a commitment The amount right now, I believe, is they have it as $750,000, but it could be reduced. That would be the max. So at this point, what they're asking is that the county commit to the match, so this project can go forward. It's my understanding that the bids have already gone out, and PennDOT would like to move this forward.
And I think the paper reported today that at the LCTA meeting today, they may be awarding the contracts. That's what the paper reported. Okay, questions for Ms. Corcoran?
If you do have questions, please forward them to me. I know that Mr. Fume would be readily accessible to answer those questions.
Okay, Mr. Haas, do you have a question?
I have, yeah, I do, Mr. Chair, actually, and I brought up last meeting. I don't recall this coming forward until just a couple meetings ago, even though this project has been in the works for a long time.
We lost you. As far
I don't know
as
if we
your
could
audio.
Mr.
I'm
Hudson,
sorry.
I'm engaged here.
okay, if you want to send me an email and I'll respond, I could check to see if it was brought up before or not, but it's coming to fruition now, the project.
Okay, again, my original
All right.
question was, I don't recall this ever being discussed, months or years out. And we spoke about this last time, and the other one, again, it's always comes up when we talk about these things, is Hazleton going to join in to the multimodal center?
I think Hazleton has just opened.
It might be really appropriate. Mr. from an area, so it might be very helpful.
Yep.
Mr.
Okay.
McGinley?
Mr. McKinley, as Harry just touched on Hazleton, I think the Hazleton project was for $25 million. Mr. Sharp, at the time, he was the president of the transit for the state. He complimented council because their giving at the time was $300,000 on 25 million.
Yep.
So those numbers are
Similar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because here it's saying 58 or 60 $million. So
Yeah, I think
those
58
numbers
is
are.
what I read, I think, in the letter or something. Okay,
Mr. McGinley?
yes, go ahead, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, thank you. Is there the LSA fund that the county gets, is there any money there that the county can use for this fund instead of taking it from the American Recovery funding? The problem I have is the American Recovery funding is for something that benefits the entire county. The LCTA does not serve the entire county. They only serve certain municipalities in the county. And I think we had that discussion, I think the last time when they brought this issue up, was we wanted the LCTA to go to the municipalities of which they serve and ask them if they could get some of their LSA money to help offset this cost. It just seems that every time somebody needs extra money for their matching grants, they come in with their hat in hand to the county. I think the communities that the LCTA serves should be stepping up. We had this argument with the Hazleton Transit, and Mayor Cassatt brought it to our attention that, every time Hazleton Transit comes for money, we always want to tell them to go to Schuylkill or go somewhere to get their money. Yet LCTA comes for money, and we just all roll over and give them what they need. And I think it's imperative that we ask the LCTA to be as responsible as we're asking Hazleton City. And I just think that if we have LSA money available, instead of taking it from the American Recovery Fund, that's fine. If we don't, then maybe LCTA needs to go out to those municipalities that they serve and see if they can help offset that cost, and then come back to the county and ask us what the difference would be if we would be willing to fund it.
Okay. I think, Mr. Griffith, you're aware that the LSA, they did get a grant of $350,000 that was announced, I think, last month. And that's why they said 750,000 versus 1.1 million.
Right, but
And I
that's
think they
the,
have another excuse me, I think they have another application in right now for another $350,000. I'm not sure where that application is. It's not through the county, obviously. So I'm not aware of potential there.
Yeah,
But they did.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like I said, they did get one LSA commitment, and they're searching for the second one. And I think I read it, or someone indicated something. I think they're searching out for other sources also, but that's where we are at this point.
Well, I appreciate the input, Mr. McGinley, but I just think that the LSA, we have LSA funds as a county. They're going out for matching funds through the LSA as a separate entity through the Commonwealth Financing Authority. So I think we have some LSA money that we could use for that if we need to do that. But my underlying question is that the municipalities also should be checking into their LSA funds that they get and see if they can send some of their funding along the way from the municipalities that the LCTA serves. I don't think that's unreasonable. And again, we brought that issue up when it came to Hazleton City, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the LCTA to go to the municipalities of which they serve, whether it be Dallas or Trucksville or Kingston Township and all these other entities, and ask them for a portion to help offset that cost instead of the county ponying up all the money.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you. PFM. Mr. Sweats, is Mr. Scherer on, or whoever is on?
Mr. Scherer is on.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Good to be with you, at least virtually this evening. So everyone should, I think, have a handout that was provided.
It was part of the packet. Yeah, we had that as part of our packet for tonight's agenda.
Perfect. Thank you. There's just one minor revision that I saw in the graph, which we'll go over. But this evening, similar to prior years when I attended the meetings at this time, to sort of do a real brief debt overview of the county as you're kind of in the heat of the budget season, and then also briefly talk about the upcoming tax anticipation note that will be needed by the county to fund some of the operations, at least on an interim basis in 2022. So again, mainly just kind of hitting on a brief overview of the existing debt, and then a little bit on the upcoming tax anticipation note, and then happy to answer any questions that you may have. So if you're following along on the presentation, the first page, it's actually page 2, where at the top it says debt portfolio update, outstanding debt. So there's 4 different kind of items on this page, and the left-hand side is the graph, the debt service graph of the county's outstanding debt service. And this is the one thing that I caught. For some reason, the graph got cut off from the last year, but I think everyone's aware that your debt service is pretty much level at around 26 million or so. And then the last year, for some reason, this one cut off in 2029, but it actually goes to 2030, and there's about a $6 million payment. So you should see like a little stub bar on the far right-hand side there. So again, the overall debt service is very level for the county, around 26 million or so, and then it does drop off substantially for 2030, where it's about 6 million. On the right-hand side, where it says Exhibit B, something we usually like to update the council with is the borrowing capacity. So that's something that, whether it's a county or school district or town or city, always looking at borrowing base to make sure, they're within legal capacity, or how much room do they have. So we took the kind of the limit from 2019. The calculation gets a little bit cumbersome to do, so we took the last one that we did officially. We subtracted out the county's debt and any other exclusion. And so the remaining borrowing capacity is about $518 million. So, again, I have no idea if the county has any plans in the future for additional borrowings, but just to let you know that you're nowhere near your legal borrowing capacity. You can see, just as a brief illustration of fixed rate versus variable rate. So the debt portfolio has come along quite a bit over the years. So now 100% of the county's debt is in fixed rate, and nothing is in variable rate. And Exhibit D on the bottom right hand of that just shows basically the average interest rate of the remaining series of bonds and notes. The 2019 average rates in the low 2s. The 2017's average rate is in the high 2s. And then the 2015's are in the mid 3s. So overall, the county, from a debt capacity standpoint, you're in very good shape. From a kind of a traditional debt portfolio standpoint, being all in fixed rate debt, you're in good shape. And as far as your overall interest rates, again, in very, very good shape there, pretty low interest rates. The one thing I will note on this one, so again, sticking with Exhibit D on the bottom right-hand corner of page 2, where it says a 2019 average rate. We'll talk about that on one of the other pages. So that was a bank loan that the county did for some of the 911 stuff and some refunding that generated substantial savings in 2019. One thing that we may be able to do for that rate, it's obviously already a very low rate of a 2.17, but we may be able to renegotiate with that particular bank, possibly a lower interest rate. So I'm going to be working with county staff on seeing if that makes any sense or not. It's just something that we've been exploring. And so if there's something more to talk about, we'll clearly be before you sometime here in the near term. Nothing obviously to do now, but it's something that we have on our radar screen. You go to page 3, it's just another way of looking at the county's debt portfolio. So we have the direct debt of the county, and it lists all the different bond issues, starting from the series of 2019 down to the series C of 2003. And then it also adds in your lease rental debt that was issued through the Industrial Development Authority. So again, that shows how we came up with the calculation of about 195 million of total principal amount outstanding as of the time of that we put this together. And then on page 4, kind of now shows, so we sort of talked about, the composition of your debt portfolio and fixed rate, traditional, and what the average rates are. Page 4, we always like to show, because now this is more from a budget perspective. What does all that mean on an annual basis? And so in this page here, specifically in column 11, where it says subtotal new GO debt service. So again, your debt service is around 26.5 million, give or take a little bit, in each one of the years until we get out to 2030, and then it drops off to about 6.2 million, and then after that, your debt is fully paid off as of what's outstanding right now. And so that's from an annual perspective what you have to pay, and then the bottom of this page just kind of lays out what the respective bond issues did. And just, at a high level, the 2019s, I think most folks remember, again, that funded the 911 project and also generated a couple $1 million of debt service savings. The 2017s, they were the new money project, that was the energy savings project. And then there were substantial savings with the refunding component. I think there were between funds on hand, reserves on hand and reduction due to interest rates, about 15 million of savings from those bond issues. And then the 2015s were the various restructurings and the swap termination. So again, at a high level, that just gives you an overview of the county's debt. Page 5, remember the county does still have the basis swap outstanding. And so something that we've been watching, with the finance office over the years that we've been working with the county, it actually became effective in 2013, but it was entered into way back in 2006. So this one's been on the books for a while. So the paperwork was done in 2006, but it became effective in 2013. It's now related to the 2015 bonds. One thing that, again, nothing to do now at all, but here in a few years, the index that those basis swaps are tied to is known as LIBOR. Well, LIBOR is being phased out in a couple years. And so that's something that we're working with other clients on replacing that index. So maybe we'll get to that point with the county, or maybe prior to then the county may terminate the basis swap. If you remember back in 2006, when the paperwork was entered into, the county received about $2.5 million of upfront money for that. And then there's an exchange of payments that go on a periodic basis through the county. And right now, on an annual cash flow basis, it's more or less break even, which is what it's supposed to be doing, more or less. So for the most part, everything's working fine right now with that basis swap. If you did want to terminate it and get out of it right now, it would cost, where you see down there the approximate market value for the two different pieces, it would cost maybe about $150,000 to terminate it. We're not recommending doing that right now. Again, everything's working fine. but it's something that we'll continue to monitor. And then on page 6, we kind of shifting gears now and getting into the Tran. So on the right-hand side of page 6 is a quick breakdown of the historical amounts of Tran borrowings that the county has incurred over the years. And remember, the Tran is something that's basically borrowed or closed on January 2nd of each year, and then it legally has to be paid off by the end of the calendar year. That's that specific calendar year. But the county has been very prudent over the years and has done short-term, even shorter-term Trans where it would be paid off in 6 months. So, again, this is not debt that kind of keeps, that's long-term debt. This is, basically 6-month long debt that the county uses while waiting for the tax receipts to come in. And so the past couple of years has been about 16 million. And then prior to that, it was around 17 million. And then we saw some years of 20 million and 18 million. So my hunch is we're probably going to be looking again at somewhere at 16 million or maybe a little bit less. But it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark. And from a timing standpoint, we're looking at, obviously this evening, we have our initial discussion. We'd like to send out the RFP, the request for proposals, to the various banks here later this week and have them due back, sometime around Thanksgiving. And then look to come back to you, I believe it's your December 7th meeting for the approval of the legal documents related to the Tran, and then close on, we're showing here, January 3rd. So again, kind of very customary borrowing that the county has done to just sort of help with the short-term cash flow issues. That's very common to have. And so again, we'll be working with your finance office to hone in on the amount, but again, I think it's probably gonna be around 16 million. And then lastly, on page 8, we just always have a quick update or review of the county's credit rating. And, again, right now, the rating is currently in Standard & Poor's A-, which is a very good rating. Over the years, it's kind of varied. It was BBB- for a little while, which was just right on the cusp of investment grade. It was basically the lowest investment grade. Prior to that, for a couple of years, it was a BB+, which was just right below investment grade. And then, prior to that, it was in the BBB category as well. But right now, the county's rating is very good at that S&P A-. And then there are just a couple things that the rating agency, and this comes right from the rating agency, not PFM, on ways the rating could improve, maintaining budgetary balance, while also making sure you address any rising expenditures and things that could weaken the rating, structurally imbalanced budgets and reserves weakening. Again, overall, though, the rating is very good right now for the county. So with that, that's all I had for this evening, just a quick general update and sort of setting the stage for coming back in a couple weeks for the Tran document after we put out the RFP. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Chair? I have one question. You talked about that bank loan. And over the past many years, we've done some restructuring of bonds, et cetera. And there's always some associated costs with that kind of bond activity. What kind of costs would we be looking at with a bank loan, maybe that could be renegotiated?
It would actually probably be the lowest of any of the transactions, because it would be a renegotiation. So it wouldn't necessarily be a reissuance. We would just go back to that same bank and try to renegotiate a lower interest rate, and that's being done just to kind of save on issuance costs. So I would need to check with some of the other parties involved, but I would say we would be, maybe 75,000 or less in total cost, somewhere in that ballpark. So again, substantially less than some of the prior transactions.
Okay. Is somebody looking at potential renegotiation and what kind of benefit it would be for the county?
I'm sorry, for who?
For the county? What
Yes,
kind of benefit?
Yes. So that's where, we're going to work with your finance office a little bit more. We're going to go back to the bank and just see, what they can do. Again, as I mentioned, right now, the rate's very low, which is great. And if we can lower it, maybe another 20 basis points or so, it's something that will come back to you probably around the same time as we come back to you with the Tran proposals. So yeah, I mean, we're looking out for the county's best interest, and so we're the ones that would be negotiating to try to get that lower rate if the bank's willing to do that. Again, it's already a very low rate.
Okay. I wish somebody would pursue that though. You know, we would appreciate any savings that we could.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. No, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Mr. Schaefer.
One question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Haas.
Hey, Mr. Chair, welcome to Wilkes-Barre virtually.
Yeah.
Thanks for the help you.
Mr. Haas, you're having trouble with your audio. I don't know.
Help, we've been able to trim the debt nearly in half, and that is my out is engaged. You know, maybe I'll take the. Can you hear me better this way?
Try it. Sometimes it helps when you cut the video.
How's that, everybody? Is it a little more clear?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, Mr. Thanks again. Hats off to you and for PFM for just helping us through these past 10 years and trim the debt nearly in half in that time. And I personally appreciate it on behalf of all the taxpayers too. We're looking at these American funds. And I know, can you hear me okay?
You were just starting to cut out there a little bit.
It's not coming through well.
Am I coming through, Mr. Chair?
That's not, you're getting cut off in midstream there at times.
Yeah.
Mr. Haas, I
can't
think
hear
you're
me.
having trouble.
I just want to know, okay. You know, Mr. Chair, I'll
send Mr. Scherer an email if you have a specific question, and I'm certain he'll reply.
Oh, sure. Yep, you bet.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me this evening.
Yep. We're down to committee reports, and you know, if there's no report, just indicate that and we'll move on. Mr. Vo, Act 13.
No report at this time. We're going to try and meet in the next 2 weeks. Thanks.
Mr. Perry, ABC.
We just completed 2 meetings in 1 week, reviewing approximately 20 candidates. We have approximately 40 more to go, so we'll have another meeting in November.
Another meeting in November, budget, finance, and audit, and obviously we're working through the budget. Mr. Haas, legislative. I don't know. Mr. Haas. How about Ms. McDermott?
No report right now.
Okay. Ms. Howe?
No report on strategic initiatives or code review either.
Thank you. Ms. Radel, I think you indicated that the Special Election Decision Committee has completed their work. Am I correct?
Yes, nothing to report.
Thank you. And County Council email policy, I think Ms. Saban, you said you were waiting for timing on that?
Yes.
Mr. Haas, are you back with us? I saw your picture, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think I'm back, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay. Blighted properties? Okay. Mr. Vo, county cares?
Yes, we will meet Thursday at 5 p.m. virtually.
Thursday this week. And Riverfront Parks Committee, Mr. Haas, we're having trouble with this connection. The last item there would be the review of the ABC application with proposed changes. And I think, if I'm correct, there's the current application and one that Ms. Houck has submitted information. Labeled.
Mr. Perry and I had discussed this, and he asked me to take a look at it. The only thing I would say on that one, it's very similar, like the first page is very similar. But on page 205 of the agenda, when we talked about this, we originally thought there was going to be a commission for women. We don't have a commission for women, do we? Right?
No,
So-
we eliminate that.
Right, so
you're
that
back
would need to be stricken from that page.
Okay.
Um,
Anything else?
Should-
Mr. Perry or Ms. Houck?
Mr. Chair, just, we looked at this October the 14th, and we bandied about some changes and some other aspects of it. We kind of settled on on Linda's because it was to the point. It's simple. It arranged everything the way we wanted to. And I think that's what we were looking for. And if you look at the changes, again, as Linda pointed out, the Commission for Women, we'll get that out of there. She highlighted the articles, Article 8, and I think that's the most important part of the OABC, pages 41 to 48. That's what everybody should be reading before or after they fill this application out. So that was an important little highlight there, touched what you needed to find out. If you turn the page, another change in that would be, Linda put in there, receipt of your application will be acknowledged by email. I mean, I think we always done something we always did. And so it's in there. In the last page, notice how Linda put down the yeses and nos in a straight line. Those questions are very important because they're the basic questions that we ask for anybody for any applying for any of the ABCs. So it's nice to find one going straight down. The other one, you're looking all over the page. So I kind of thought that this was a simple little changes that made things better. Leanne McDermott came up with a real good idea also. We were thinking about, since Article 8 is so important, that maybe we should attach it to it, and we think that would be too cumbersome. But she has suggested maybe if we get the office, the IT department, put a little link exactly where you get this from on our website and have Article 8 right there. So that someone can actually, if you're downloading the application and you're reading it, hey, this is right here. I don't have to go look at the chart. It's right there for you to download the most important things that you should read. And I think through the years, I've found out that many times it's very important to ask questions pertinent to the respective ABCs that person is applying to. So what I will do as I move through here, I will make sure I put this in my notes so that the next person coming in next year will have this to start with, and maybe they could refine it, make things better, or maybe throw it out and start over again with the questions. But that's the plan moving forward.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
The application itself will be on our agenda for next voting session to approve it so that we have it in place. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes, go ahead.
On the
I don't see your picture though.
On the ABC committee. There you
Go
go.
ahead.
On the ABC committee, I sent an email out and asked who makes the determination that an applicant is not qualified or eligible to be on the eligibility list. And I did not get a response from Mr. Perry, but I just have a problem with the fact that arbitrarily we take people off the eligibility list without a public vote by the committee or by the council. And I don't know, I understand why Lynn Bartz was taken off the list because she was a poll worker and she received funding in 2020 for working the polls. But at some point, she was sent a letter stating that she was no longer on the eligibility list, yet council never got that letter. Council never was informed that she was removed from the list. So at some point, maybe we can tighten that language up for the ABC process moving forward, is that council is actually put aware, because we all some of us sit through the interviews, and I'm wondering why some of these people were taken off the eligibility list, and I have no idea why some of these people were taken off. No idea. And I'm sure the other 10 members don't either. So I don't know why we're taking people off the eligibility list without telling council why they were removed, so we could keep our information current. Could we get an answer to how that happened? How did we remove Lynn Bartz from the eligibility list?
Walter, I've been on the ABC committee for 4 years, twice under Mr. Kelleher, and twice I was chair.
Right.
And the process that we use is very simple. If someone is in conflict with the charter, that person then would get a letter saying that they are not eligible. And that's the process we used all the way forward. Now, if indeed the council should know about it, I think it's not a bad idea. I mean, moving forward, that's very easy. After every, it's not just, it doesn't happen right after the meeting. It may take a week or two to really decipher what's what's what. Some of them are very simple, some of them are not. So I think it's a reasonable request to send it to council. And I think I could go with that very easily.
If I could just jump in here a little bit.
Sure, Lynn.
I don't know that somebody's been removed. I think the question is, was somebody interviewed and didn't get onto the eligibility list? And
Well-
that would be the issue.
Yes.
So just because someone was interviewed does not necessarily mean they're going to be on that eligibility
Yeah,
list.
but in the
And-
case of Ms. Parks, she was on it.
And I understand
That
that,
was
but that
an oversight.
eligibility list is public, it's for public knowledge. I mean, it's, public can click on it and see who's on the eligibility list,
Absolutely.
correct? So
Yep.
as, when somebody has completed the interview process and they've been determined to be eligible, that's when they're on the eligibility list. You know, as far as whether someone's eligibility was determined incorrectly or whatever, and then they were removed from it, you know, maybe you want to let council know when there's been a
Sure.
change to that. But, you know, every time people are added to it, I mean, I think it's just a matter of us checking it, and we get a copy of the eligibility list anyway. But, the other thing is that, according to the bylaws and the procedure that we have for it, that eligibility is for 2 years, up to 2 years. And then they would be dropped from the eligibility list because they would have to go through the process again. At one time, it was supposed to be a year, but that seemed a little cumbersome to make people. do
Yeah, I
that.
think that's been in place for a long time,
Right.
2 years.
Yeah, so we changed it to 2 years. So, you know, the eligibility list would change, but people may drop off that list because they've been eligible for more than 2 years and they haven't been re-interviewed.
Yeah, and I understand that. My only question is that, you know, council, I think, or the committee should actually convene to decide whether they want to remove somebody, because the Office of Law doesn't make the bottom line determination, do they? I mean, I think that's a council decision. They give us their opinion, and council should make the decision whether we want to follow that opinion. Quite honestly, I argued that issue with Finkelstein, that I didn't think the poll worker was a valid reason to remove somebody from the list. And that's why we raised it with Lynn Bartz, is because of the same reason. So I think a debate or discussion by council to remove somebody from the list is not inappropriate, or certainly not out of line. I certainly understand the time restraints that the committee works under most times, but I mean, we do have an eligibility list. And as I asked at the meeting when you were having your interviews, there were people that came in for a double interview, and I asked why the other people weren't brought in, and you said they weren't on the list. I had no idea they were removed from the list. I had no idea Andrew Marco was removed, or Poulter. I had no idea he was removed from the list. Nobody ever told council. So and I appreciate, you know, if you can fix that, that'd be great, because I think it's important that all council knows what's current and what's not.
Yeah, well, I don't have any problem doing that whatsoever. And
Thank you.
The reason why I ever did it is because no one ever asked. To tell you the truth.
Sure. Yep.
And we don't reconvene after we have a meeting and then we find somebody that has a conflict with council. We don't reconvene and say, let's vote on this. It's understood that if someone is a violation of the charter, and if there's a question about it isn't a violation of the charter, we go to the Office of Law just to reaffirm that we're reading this right. Some of it's easy and some of it certainly isn't. And just, it's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
But you're right, I should tell council.
Yeah,
mean,
I appreciate that.
That's a reasonable request, Walter, no problem.
Yeah, and my only concern is I don't want the Office of Law running the council. I want the council to run the council. And the Office of Law is certainly entitled to an opinion when we ask them for it, but I think it's up to council to accept that opinion or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Bednar? You have the floor. Yeah, we need to give you a microphone. That doesn't look. We need to have one of those small ones. You can use the podium or the table, whichever you're comfortable with.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It's up to you, whatever you're
Let's go
comfortable
with
with.
me then.
And we do have your summary sheets that were provided, okay?
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, so on the beginning of the sheet that everyone received.
Let's do the summary sheet first with Ms. Bednar.
Okay, for the summary sheet then, we have positions, we have 3 non-representatives, 1 representative. And
What
one,
is the summary sheet? It says representative 2021, 1 plus 1 elected. What does that mean?
it
And
should
then
be
the
1.
bottom of 22, it just says 1.
It's only supposed to be 1 elected, but
That's what I thought. Okay.
yeah. Well, and then, okay, so then for the 2021, we have adopted expenses 273,551. And for the proposed expenses, we have for 2022, 278,486. I do want to point out on the budget worksheet for the elected official, under the one line item, the salary is incorrect on there. That was a incorrect input with budget and finance. So I just want to point that out because that's a 67,999. It's supposed to be 64,999. So under the county
So what you're
manager,
saying is under 2022.
2022, what column, the second column?
64,999
Correct,
instead of 67,499.
correct. Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so then the only changes to expenses would be for under the conference and training fees, we went from 1,610 to 3,220. And that was for the change in the decrease from the COVID that we changed back to the figure that it was. So then we're going in person to to get our CPU credits. So now do you want to
Okay.
get down?
Questions from Ms. Bednar?
Just on the revenue, can you explain what the audit fees are? That you have $375 in audit fees for revenue?
That goes back from restitution fees, and they won't change that because the names are still on the list for the restitution in case a family member, somebody would come forward to pay that.
Ms. Bednar, you have 3 non-representative people in your office, correct?
Correct.
And merit increase to 3,665 would be monies that would be used for those 3 positions. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Just want to make sure that that's the way I understood.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out for the,
And have you completed their evaluations?
yes. And are filed with Human Resources.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Questions for Ms. Bednar?
I have a question, Mr. McGinley.
Go ahead.
The worksheet, you have a union representative that's supposed to be making $40,000 in 2022. But the budget shows it's a $39,310 is a salary for your represented employee. The budget was, the 22 county manager budget says the represented employee makes $39,310. Yet the represented employee gets a raise, and that was not factored in the budget. Is
Well,
it
that was in-
represented right?
The non, that
That's
represented
line 510.20
0.
in the budget.
Right, 51020 should say 40,000, $40,040, I believe,
No, 40,096.
Yeah, 40,096 is right.
but it doesn't say that in the budget.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Mr. Griffith and all of council, it's Brian. County manager is done by budget and finance in the manager's office. So that wasn't done by Ms. Bednar. We can just add it to an amendment. If it's a contract that's settled and we have the dollar amount, we'll just correct it.
So do we have that same problem in all the departments, Brian?
We shouldn't, because anything that's settled, we should have the number in there. If the contract's not settled, we would have an estimated number on what we think we're going to settle the contract for. And that's historically what we've done since I've been here.
So
If
the
contract
AFSCME,
isn't settled and the negotiating team thinks their increase is going to be 2%, we'll budget 2% regardless of what the actual contract settles at. But
So
if
the
it's a
AFSCME
settled
contract-
Go ahead.
so the AFSCME contract's not settled right now?
I know court related AFSCME isn't. I'm not sure what, this obviously isn't court related. I think AFSCME is up at the end of this year. So if it is the same, it should have been in at a 2% increase. But we'll check in and tell council what to do with that. Had nothing to do with the controller's office. We actually put that number in.
But the AFSCME contract is AFSCME 87, which is probably our largest contract. So my question is, are we working on the same premise for all the other union representatives as well? That their budget is the same for 2022 when we should have changed it?
No, we changed the budget. This one ends on the end of this year. So this contract ends 12/31/21. So my understanding is that anyone that ended, Budget and Finance was working with Admin Services to get what they thought we're going to propose. So there should have been a change, but it's not because it's AFSCME. If the contract's not settled, we get a percentage from Admin Services. If it's settled, the correct amount should be in there.
If I may, maybe this might give some clarification. We're negotiating all of AFSCME, and the current contract expires December of this year.
Right, but my initial question is, in the budget, have we budgeted all the departments that are under AFSCME 87 to reflect a proposed increase or not? Because apparently we didn't in this department. So are we doing the same in all the other AFSCME? AFSCME 87 is our largest contract.
No, we're putting in a percentage. It was an oversight in this particular department.
Okay, so just in this department, we missed it.
Yes.
Okay.
But as
All right.
Brian said, we'll check the other departments, but it was included. I know it was included in the other departments.
But you didn't know it wasn't included in this one?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right, so then my other question is the raise, the 36,665. That means everybody's going to get $1,000 raise in the non-represented category, correct? So that's about maybe a 2.5% raise for the 3 people, correct?
Me? Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that answers that. That answers that. So they're going to get a 2.5% raise for those 3 people, and that. Okay, so that's the only questions I had. Thanks, Mr. McGinley.
Okay, is there anyone else? Mr. Urban?
Can you clarify 520.20, would the actual payroll taxes unemployment go down by 400, or should that be 1,600 as well?
Well, that's what Budget and Finance is that. Let's see.
No, that's correct, Mr. Urban. It did go down. That line went down for everybody. So that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Bednar.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to-
Mr. Greenwald?
If I may, before Attorney Greenwald takes the podium, I just want to say that Attorney Greenwald has led the Public Defender's Office for a number of years, and we have one of the best public defender's offices in the state. Our juvenile unit continues to get kudos from the state, and this is due because of Attorney Greenwald's leadership. He's a zealot advocate in court for his clients. He's a zealot advocate for his employees. I do want to state that originally his budget was a little bit higher, but to get to the tax status, we needed to cut $20,000 from meetings and trainings, and we also deducted about $30,000 from his examination of witnesses. I expect Attorney Greenwald to advocate to get that money back. And without any further ado, Attorney Greenwald.
Okay, Attorney Greenwald, you have the podium.
I think that's
Do the
pretty
summary
accurate.
sheet first, please.
I'm sorry. I
Summary
didn't hear
sheet
you,
first.
Mr. McGinley, I don't think this works if 2 of us talk at the same time. I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Would you do the summary sheet first, please?
Sure. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and I think Ramilda's right. I am going to advocate to get this money back. With regard to longevity, 2 people in the department retired. So that's why that number is reduced. Do you want me to start up top with regard to revenue?
Yes, if you would,
Okay.
please.
The revenue is as stated there. I have a contract, I think as everybody knows by now, the Public Defender's Office has a contract with MHDS, which accounts for, I believe the number's 276. 276,000 MHDS pays for the salary and benefits of 4 public defender employees. That contract arose at the time of the, I'm going to use the familiar terminology, Kids for Cash scandal, when the basically Pennsylvania Supreme Court decided that we needed a juvenile unit, and that's how that started out. We also have listed as $40,000 in revenue for a Gideon's Promise Fellowship. We just hired a young man who is a graduate of George Washington University. George Washington pays that young man's salary for the first year that he's with the office. In exchange, we commit to enrolling and sending him to the Gideon's Promise program for the next 3 years. Actually, the number that's attributed, I think, in the budget is $40,000. The number that George Washington is actually paying is $50,000. With regard to the position numbers, I don't really have anything to add other than the fact that I'm down 3 full-time attorneys. We have a real problem in the Public Defender's Office. I think it's something that's also occurring in the District Attorney's Office right now, that it's a very, very difficult job. It's a very difficult job in the middle of a pandemic. And for the pay that we're paying these young attorneys, it's really, really difficult for them to earn a living, to pay their bills, and to not see that they can make more money elsewhere. So I'm down 3 full-time attorneys, and I know the District Attorney's Office is having the same issue. With regard to longevity, as I stated earlier, 2 people left the office and retired, so that number is reduced. Examination of witnesses is always a problem. It seems it was always the subject of discussion when I approach council with my budget. Essentially, what I always strive for is some type of parity with the District Attorney's Office. And I think that everybody in council by now knows the history of that particular line item. But for those that don't, several years ago, that line item pays for expert witnesses for the Public Defender's Office. From cases including homicides to, in some instances, misdemeanors. There are instances where we have clients who need mental health evaluations, and I engage the services of a psychiatrist or a psychologist to do that, and they need to be paid. As I said, some of my goal here is to achieve some type of parity with the District Attorney's Office. The District Attorney in that line item has $130,000 presently. In addition, I think it's important that council know that in most criminal cases, the District Attorney's Office experts are already employees of the Commonwealth. In other words, they're police officers, they're state police, they're fire marshals, so they come free to the DA's office. The DA also has a separate line item for death penalty cases. I think it's at $150,000. So right now, the District Attorney's Office is at $280,000 for expert witnesses. My office is listed as 70. Not only is it terribly unfair, but it's not right. And I would ask that the council just basically give back what I put in the budget to achieve some semblance of parity. It's not right. The Public Defender's Office should have 25% of the budget of the district attorney's office. We do 80% of the cases, at least maybe 90% of the cases, and I'd be happy to accept 80% of the DA's budget. With regard to meetings, conferences, and with regard to subscriptions, there's an addition there. Something happened last year which was kind of extremely unusual, and it was with regard to the Uptrust texting messaging service that the public defender's office engages. Kind of have to go back a couple years, and they made an error, and they did not send messages in a timely way when daylight savings time changed to daylight standard time in October, I think it was 2018. And about 40 text messages were not sent in a timely manner. They were sent a couple hours late. No one was incarcerated as a result of that. No one, at worst, people were late for their hearings. Because I think in part, at least, because of the relationship that I have with Uptrust, they decided as a result of their error to give me that year for free, which I think was a tremendous, tremendous show of support on their part. What happened mechanically was really kind of odd because we had already paid our bill. Long story short, they sent us a check. We didn't really know what to do with it. And when it came time to pay the next year's bill, we just decided to credit it. So that's why you see that we only spent $57,000. I pay Uptrust 18 grand every year. So I need the $78,000 to pay Uptrust this year. And I hope that won't be any time of a contentious discussion. That subscriptions include Westlaw and which you guys just discussed, and it also includes my case management software, which is called JusticeWorks. With regard to meeting, conference, and training fees, that originally in 2021 was $20,000. Excuse me, I'm not used to talking for this long. It was reduced by Mr. Pedri in the middle of the pandemic to $5,000. So the number that's listed there is not accurate. It should be 20. It was originally adopted as 20. I actually requested more than 20 this year because the Uptrust program, I'm sorry, the Gideon's Promise program no longer accepts payment over time. In other words, I used to be able to pay them over 3 years their tuition, which is about $8,500. I think in part because of the fact that more than one Luzerne County public defender left the employee of the county without completing the program. They did not ask to be paid. They changed the policy and now require payment for the entire program, essentially upfront. So I'd have two young lawyers going this year. I need more than the 20 grand. My estimate is I probably need $25,000. And that's pretty much my report.
Okay, questions for Attorney Greenwald?
I would just say,
Ms. Houghton?
I agree with you about the parity between the DA's office and your office. And I'll support an amendment to increase your witnesses fee.
Thank you.
Your witnesses allocation. So thank you for what you do.
Anyone else? Attorney?
And since there's no questions, and I don't mean to interrupt, Mr. Urban, I just want to let everybody know, because I've now kind of listened to a couple of these meetings. I'm not sure it's the most entertaining or pleasant thing I've ever done, but it seems like there's a sense, I get the sense that not everybody on council knows what we do. So I would just invite you to come over and see what we do. I think in my 9 years there, really haven't had anybody come and ask me any questions. And I'm happy to do that. I think it's important for everybody on council, the taxpayers and the public, to understand what we do. I'm fortunate enough to lead an office of very, very dedicated employees, including a group of lawyers who are appearing in court on a daily basis in a very, very dangerous environment. And I think you all recognize that, you know, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and these lawyers day in and day out go to the third floor of the courthouse, they go to central court. And I think it's important that everybody recognize that.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Urban?
Looking at like the mileage reimbursement, do you anticipate hitting that number of 5,000?
Probably not, Mr. Urban, because of central court. We don't travel. Historically, our attorneys had traveled to the 17 different magistrates for preliminary hearings. We don't do that anymore, but we do have attorneys who travel to the southern end of the county to Magistrate O'Donnell, Dixon, and Zola. So there is a part of the mileage reimbursement that I'll use, but probably not as much as I used to. But keep in mind, mileage reimbursement also goes, for example, every year the Pennsylvania Bar Association holds a conference in Harrisburg. It's a little bit expensive, but my point is the attorneys drive there and drive back. And for those who are eligible, I need to reimburse that mileage as well.
Right. And the other question is what's your trend as far as caseload, you know, for like your anticipated caseload for in the near future and maybe in the last couple of years?
The numbers are almost the same year to year. I'd say the trend is a little bit up, around 6,000, 6,200 cases every year. This is a strange year. We're only at, I think the number is about 4,800 to the end of October. So that's almost 500 cases a month. That would take us to about 5,800 cases to the end of the year. It's almost as much as we had the year before. But again, this is a strange year, and it's kind of difficult to use this as a norm.
Okay. Other questions?
Mr. McGinley?
Go ahead, Ms. Saban.
Yes, I just want to echo what Linda Houck said. I think the last time you were here, Steve, I also was concerned about the lack of parity in your witness fees and in your budget to the DA's office. There is a built-in unfairness and bias to the public defender, but it's a significant and important job. So I would be in favor of raising your budget.
Okay, anyone else?
Thank you for that.
Mr. McGilly?
Go ahead, Ms. Griffith.
Mr. Greenwald, could you tell me on your merit raise pay what that number breaks down to? You have a $74.99 increase in merit increases for your non-represented employees. What percentage does that reflect over your 5 positions in non-represented employees? Is that 2%, 1%? What would your estimation be?
Are you asking me who's getting what?
No, I'm asking you. I mean, you know who's getting that money. So, what percentage of a pay increase? Oh, you don't?
I don't know who's getting that money because I don't know if anybody's getting any money at all. I haven't made the determination. Historically, we have been given the authority to make those decisions as division heads. We've been given the authority to make those decisions about who gets what. But I don't even entertain that notion until I know whether or not I have that money to give out.
So how was that number determined?
I think it's a percentage of the total of salary for non-represented.
Mr. Griffith,
That's
if you
what
look
it's
at
been in the
the
past.
What was that, Mr.?
If you look at the total, Mr. Griffith, for the non-represented, it's just shy of 300,000,
Right?
89, I think. So you're
Yep.
looking at approximately 2.5% as a, an overall figure.
And that was my question.
Yeah.
That was my question. Is it a 2.5% increase across 5 positions?
Well, I think that's up to Mr. Greenwald to decide the merit part of it, but just on a straight percentage, I think you're looking at approximately 2.5%.
But see, that goes to our initial argument discussion we had last budget session about how do we determine the amount of money that we give non-represented employees, and why is it up to the department? Because it should be we should just say across the board, everybody gets 2% increase as council that's non-represented, and then it's finished, rather than have the ability for a department head to take a number of whatever that number is and give 5% to one and 2% and 1% to another. So if council determines that everybody gets a 2%, just like we do for unions, that would be a better way to do it rather than merit increase.
Actually, what the process was the division and department heads, the division head did the evaluations, and based on their score, there was a percent tied to that score, and the division heads did not know what the score equated to beforehand. So Mr. Greenwald would not know the amount, but he gave the evaluation and he scored them.
So every division gets a different score. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's a score that's attached to a percentage.
Okay. I just think, to fix this issue that I discussed it at the last meeting, I think the way to fix the issue is that the manager discusses with council what we want, what we can afford by the taxpayers, and we come up with a number and everybody gets the same number. Is there any guideline at all to the department head to say what percentage each employee gets, or do they all get the same?
No, they have to do an evaluation, and every person gets a different score based on their performance. And I will stand by the process that the division heads know their employees and their productivity.
Well, that's, to me,
I can add something. So the individual division heads and department heads do the score. When the score is done, you have no idea what that percentage is. It was done by HR. So, and if employees scored a 3 out of 5, let's say, nobody knew if that was 0%, 2%, 3%. The evaluations were done before the scores, and then human resources then work with the manager to get those applicable percentages. So when the division and department head did them, they had no idea what the evaluation equated to, but all the evaluations were done. If that clears it up any.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just don't understand why we're making it so difficult across the board. Why we don't just make a percentage for everybody who's non-represented, just like we do with unions. The unions get a certain percentage. Yes, I understand there's going to be people that don't do the amount of work that others do. But you know what? Quite honestly, we have that same problem in unions, but everybody gets the same rates. It doesn't matter. If you're in AFSCME 87 and you get a 2% raise, it's not based on whether you produce or you don't produce. It's based on your contract. So that's what we should do with non-represented people.
You're right. It's part of the negotiations of the collective bargaining agreement, which the non-represented do not have.
Right. So we should be the collective bargaining agent for that.
Can I interject? Can I interject?
Go ahead, Mr. Greenwald.
Yes,
So,
Stephen, please.
I think to be blunt, this is the first time I'm hearing about the process and the fact that discretion has been basically taken away from me. I think it's brilliant. I had no idea when I sat down to do my evaluations that this was the way that this was going to play out. I'm totally fine with it. And I think it's important, Mr. Griffith, to understand that I'm one of 11 division heads, not a department head, but a division head. And you employ me to make these types of decisions so that council doesn't have to get involved in these types of decisions. I'm on the deck, so to speak, every single day, and I know who works and who doesn't. And I'm a big proponent of unions. I like the fact that my attorneys are unionized. But I also believe that there's room in this particular budget and in the way this country is run to reward people based upon performance. And that's what we do in this county. And that's pretty much what capitalism is all about. So to just make a claim that paying everybody the same thing in management positions, not union positions, doesn't make any sense to me, because not everybody does the job as well as the next guy.
Thank you.
You've delegated to me the authority to make these decisions. The charter has done that. I
Thank you.
welcome it.
Members of the public who would like to address council at this time? Members of the public who would like to address council at this time? We have a motion for
Mr.
adjournment.
McGinley, before we go, last week, I had the honor of being invited down to the ribbon cutting for Luzerne County Community College in Hazleton. It was the 20th anniversary. I have to give praise to President Leary and Miss Reyes, who runs the Hazleton campus, and the instructors down there. They had two outstanding young students talk about how they entered Luzerne County Community College without any direction, and how they were embraced by instructors and Mrs. Reyes that ran Luzerne, the campus down in the Hazleton area. One young woman, she had no direction when she's going in. She's going to be a physician's assistant. Young man's going into IT, talking to people. Both are brilliant students, but had no direction. But through the people that Dr. Leary, Ms. Reyes, and the instructors and the professors down at Luzerne, I'd just like to say what a great job they're doing, not only in Hazleton, but all of Luzerne County. And again, thank you to everybody involved.
Very good. You make the motion to adjourn, Mr. Sneed?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Perry, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard, motion carries. Remember, next week, Monday evening is the budget session. Begins at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, a little different timing, Monday evening. Thank you.
Recording stopped.